Great. Okay. So we're part of Hazelnut, and Potting Shed is basically the brainchild of about a year or two, just over a year ago, when we started thinking about the kind of support we would have loved to have had when starting growing communities as an expression of church, basically. So we're going to kick off with John sharing just a little bit. Again, a lot of you probably already know this, but some of you might not, and I think it's really important to sort of have an example of what a growing community can look like as a church. So John's just going to briefly share with us a little bit about Hazelnut Bristol, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the course and what we have to offer and how we can sign up. And then most of this time is going to be for Q&A, so you can ask as many questions as you want to, but we'll just sort of introduce it first. So I'll just hand over to John.
Yeah, so just a little bit about information about kind of the journey towards starting Hazelnut. So I don't know how many of you here have come and have gardening backgrounds or growing backgrounds. When I started this journey towards Hazelnut, it was very much out of the blue, and what I would call what Pope Francis would call a climate conversion, where it was kind of 1 minute thinking, there's a lot of issues and climate emergency is one of them, and the next minute kind of having quite a strong realization that this is one of the main issues that will affect so many other issues, and it's the context into which I'm ministering into, which means that like kind of all bets are off. Things have to be done differently because we're not in a normal phase, and this is the thing. But this is the funny thing, is that when I went and told people this, it just took me a while to find language for it. It took me a while to be able to communicate it. At first, it would take me like an hour to communicate kind of my thoughts. It would take me so long to organize them, and you had a number of people that instantly would like track with you. I don't know if any of you here have ever shared a vision and there's somebody that's just like, yes, I love what you're doing, I want to be with you on that. And that was so exciting. But then equally, there'd be just as many people that would look at me so confused, and they'd be like, are you a farmer? I mean, like, do you have these skills? And it was really difficult, and sometimes it even felt really lonely. But what we did is we just started, I started just speaking to anybody that I could, and started kind of getting better at it and throwing myself into anything that I could. So I went and visited as many projects as I could, read as many books as I could, and just kind of started throwing myself into it. And what I found is that it just felt like I was having to start a lot of things from scratch. And there were things that did exist, but weren't exactly kind of what I was doing. And there just wasn't as much help to help me kind of form something that was really bespoke for my area. Anyway, luckily we've had loads of help since then, and Arash has come on board, and we've have great community forming and things. But I just really felt like if this is true, that we are in this community, that we're in this time of climate emergency, then why not give away everything that we have? Let's like every learning that I've had to go through, I just want to give it away. I want to allow people to have as easy a time as possible starting things. I want to give away any wisdom we have, and I want to encounter others that have more wisdom than myself as well. We want to just give it away. So that's kind of where the thought of Potting Shed came from, is we had lots of people coming and saying, we kind of want to do something similar in our area. How do we do this? And I just felt like, well, let's do something where we can just encourage each other and allow things to happen to kind of emerge for kind of Christian-based growing projects. Yeah, so we put a lot of work into this, and I won't say much more than that, but I'm so glad each one of you is here. I've met a lot of you. Some of you are new, and it's just such a joy to have you all with us today. And yeah, I'm excited for the journey ahead.
Thanks so much, John. John will be answering any questions in a little bit as well. So that's not the last you've heard from him. So basically, yeah, so I, similarly to John, about a year ago, tried to start a growing project. It hasn't taken off the ground quite as successfully as the Bristol one. We're still finding our feet. Still, we've been moving locations, and but speaking to John has been really, really helpful for me and all the people he has linked me up to. So our hope as a community is to restart our growing project in January alongside everybody else, and to be one of the groups on the course, so that we can restart as well as possible. The timing just works really well for us, so we're really excited about that. So essentially what we want to offer, as John has already said, is practical, spiritual, theological and community support for anyone who wants to start off or continue on this journey of growing projects or community gardens as a way of expressing who we are as a church. So what will that actually look like? In a moment, I'll share my screen to show you the curriculum that we've got outlined. I might have emailed some of that to some of you that I'm not sure who I've chatted to on email. Faces and names don't always link up in my head. But if you haven't seen that, I'm happy to send you a copy and we'll have a look at it in a moment. But essentially, we'll be running from January to May. We will be, most weeks, not every week, we'll take breaks for holidays, but most weeks for an hour on a Tuesday. We thought it was important we know a lot of you are really busy and we don't want to dominate a whole evening. So we thought we can do what we need to do in an hour a week. And those weeks will be divided between teaching weeks. So roughly per month, there'll be around 2 teaching weeks, which will be times when we bring in people who are real experts in their field and who can really offer just really top quality advice and resources for you guys. And then we'll have 1 peer group a month. We'll see how we figure that out when we know who we've got joining us, but it could be that that's geographical. So if there's a few of you in one city, you could meet up as a peer group to support one another. It could be that we find out there's a few people really wanting to focus on families, others who are working on farms, and it makes sense to sort of group you together in terms of sort of style and context. So we'll figure that out. But once a month, sort of meeting with other people doing the same thing as you to chat through learning, to chat through what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, and to support one another. And then the 4th one of the month, most months, will be a sustaining conversation. So I don't know how many of you came along to the Sustaining Church conference last summer. That was a really brilliant couple of days that John led, and we had absolute experts on climate emergency, on how the church can respond to climate emergency, and it was absolutely fantastic. So that is continuing for roughly monthly. I think it's a little bit less than monthly, isn't it? But yeah, roughly monthly. There'll be a continued sort of 1 seminar a month. So we're fitting our curriculum around that. So those will be open to everyone. And then the teaching sessions and peer groups will be specifically catered to you guys who are on this course and on this journey together. We have some really exciting names attached as well already. We've been contacting everyone in our contacts, in our Rolodex, to bring the best experts we can, and we've got a few already agreed to joining us. So we've got Arosha is joining us. We have Incredible Edible at Bristol. Who else do we have? We have some really great people. Steve Hollinghurst, Carl Beach at Edge Ministries, and we're really excited. I'm sure there'll be loads more really great people as well that will be able to share their expertise with you. So the other thing just to say is I'm assuming a lot of you lead groups or want to, or maybe in your church you have an idea and you're the person carrying this vision. What we would love to do is for this to be for teams. So if this is your vision and what you're really carrying, if there's someone else or a couple of other people who maybe haven't quite caught the vision or maybe have caught the vision, who you could bring along as well, just so that we can be doing this as teams. I think one of the things John and I have both found is that this is really hard to carry on your own. There's a lot of practical stuff to do with a growing project or community garden, and then you've got the engaging with God piece, and then you've got the dealing with the local church piece and all of those different things. So having a team around you is really important, and if you could get people to come on, you can come on your own, that's absolutely fine, but if you can get your team to come along with you, that would be fantastic. So I'm just going to share my screen now, show you the curriculum, just to run through it very briefly. And then we can probably move on to questions. I'm sure there's lots of things that we haven't really covered. So 1 second, I will share my screen. I've got too many windows open on my laptop, so it's taking a while to find the right one. There we go. So can everybody see this? Yeah, wonderful. So this, again, some of you may have already seen this, but this is just an outline of pretty much the final curriculum. We haven't got all the names attached yet, but there are people lined up for every single one. We just can't confirm yet. So essentially, we want to move through the journey from preparing the ground to sowing the seeds to bearing fruit. And we've broken that down into the really key areas that we think would be helpful in terms of practical things, in terms of actual gardening and farming and food producing things, as well as engaging families, engaging your community, what mission looks like, what worship looks like, and all those kind of things. So very briefly, just to run through, one of the things that we realized was that it's really important to work with the setting that you have and to work with nature, and not just come in and think, I think this would look really good and I'd love to grow this vegetable. Actually, if we really want to work with the planet, we need to know what we already have and work with that. So Arosha are gonna help us all do space audits, so to look at the space that we have. If you have space, if you haven't got space yet, a space yet, that's something we'd love to support you in trying to find, so please get in contact. I was looking for a space for a year, so I can very much relate to that. And then we have the sustaining conversations on engaging young people and families with nature, and designing your space. So Sarah Venn from Incredible Edible, any of you from Bristol or the Southwest probably familiar with Incredible Edible. They're a fantastic organisation, and they're going to come and help us practically in what designing the space will look like, and what, you know, where to put your veggies and what goes with each other and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to think about how those things are going to fit within our context, making sure that everything that we're doing ties into serving the community that you find yourselves in, because that is absolutely fundamental. And then we're going to start looking at food, the theology of food, what food you might grow, how, like, the best seasons to grow things in and all that. Some of you might be experts on that. Until last year, I had no idea about any of this. And then we'll start looking at services, so developing an outdoor rhythm of liturgy, which Steve Hollinghurst is going to support us with. And then we've got this sustaining conversation. John might chat to us a bit about that later, but this is the big harvest is an idea that John's been really passionate about. And that's something we'd love everyone to get involved with, in basically having a massive harvest across the country of everyone giving away as much food as possible. And then we're going to look at what generosity in terms of this looks like. And then for this last part, the peer groups are good. This is really good, this opportunity to discuss things that we've been thinking about. So we'll start there. And then soil to sacrament. One of the things that was worked really beautifully at Hazelnut Bristol is this, was it soil to table, John? Yeah, looking at basically how the sacrament of communion ties in so well with growing food. And that's something that we've taken a lot from, and we've stolen basically as a resource. So we'd love to look more at that, how you bring in the sacraments into nature, into working with nature. And then looking at how teaching from the Gospels, from the Bible, from parables, what discipleship might look like in your place. There's the diverse ways that both of those things can happen, but we'd love to talk through that. And then again, another. I've realized I've put a mistake here. I've made both of these the garden as a common voice. There's a different subject there as well. I'll edit this. But that's another sustaining conversation that John's put together, which is really exciting, looking at how we can use gardens to welcome in people from diverse backgrounds. and really break down barriers with them. So that's a quick overview. As I said, we've got lots of different people attached to those or potentially being attached to those, and we will share that with you as soon as we know, as soon as we can confirm. But it's exciting, the people that are really willing to come and share the stuff they know, basically, and it's stuff that I wish I'd known a year ago, and I'm glad that I will know this year. So yeah, we're really looking forward to everyone who's coming along to help us out. What I'd love to do now is just open up for questions. So you can type them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. If 200 people are doing that, we'll go back to chat, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, and John and I will do the best we can to answer your questions. I'll just spotlight you as well, John. There we go. So does anybody have any questions, anything they want clarifying, or
Hi, it's Sarah from Milton Keynes. Hello. I just wanted to say thank you so much for setting this up. It just sounds fantastic, and it will be so good to be able to share the journey with other people and learn from you. But also to make sure that we don't forget the core reason for doing it, because it's so easy to get caught up in growing vegetables, which is obviously very good. But actually to bring that back to linking that to, you know, the core reasons and learning about, I was just thinking as you were talking about parables, and like it was nearly always outside, wasn't it? Yeah. And so it's like, actually, you know, replicating that in our context will be really exciting to share that. So I just wanted to say thank you, really.
Thanks, Sarah. And that's totally something that I think we found, is that actually a lot of the parables are about growing food or plants, and it's brought them alive for us because we actually have plants there that we can reference when we're talking about it. It's been really, really great, actually. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Hi there. It's just really sparked off from the person who just asked. So I just have to say, I'm also on call. If my phone goes, I'm just going to end this and I'll be gone. So yeah, my name's Andy. I'm from Bristol. Sometime attender of Hazelnut, I think would be the right way of defining me. I just wonder, is it defined as terms of what is the goal? What is the goal? Is that actually a definable statement?
It's a great question. John looks like he wants to answer that, so I'll fire it.
The goal of Potting Shed as of what we want to see at the end of it. So you're asking
the goal of the project.
I was thinking more the whole project, John, not just Potting Shed. Is that actually defined? I'm not saying it should be or has to be. I'm just wondering if it is. It's
really funny you asked that, Andy, because we had a trustees day last week where we were basically trying to get to the bottom of that question. I think I would John probably has something far more wise to say, but what I would probably say is that I think from my perspective, for what all these projects individually would look like, and the goals of each of them, is to develop contextually appropriate expressions of church which are missional, have Jesus at the center, and are focused on climate emergency, and use growing food to express that. And however that looks in every place is very different. But John will have something better to say, I'm sure.
But that was good. I like that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think the other piece of that would be what it looks like to be kind of what we're calling a collective. So that we're not doing it alone. And so part of that means that we're sharing each other's burdens a bit. We're praying together, and I think it'd be interesting to see in the long term what happens in terms of more growing spaces coming together and supporting one another, and so seeing that they can flourish and actually kind of be established quite quickly and really comfortably. So that's part of it. Also, I think the other piece of it is around like, for instance, harvest is a piece. So what we're thinking is that we are a why we call ourselves Hazelnut Community Farm, is that we're a collective farm. So part of what we do is what we give away. Where our commitment at Hazelnut Bristol is to give away at least 50% of what we grow back to the community, but we give away more than that, actually, probably. And the idea is that what we give away is joined with what Lucy gives away and what, you know, is given away in other areas. And so we have a collective harvest. And so that's also the idea of this big harvest. What if we were to take and see harvest not starting in October by going to the shop or going to your cupboard and taking out the least eaten can of food and giving that away? Oh, look, here's some sweet corn we've never eaten. We'll give that, and that's called harvest. But actually, and that's still, there's still something really good about that, but actually seeing harvest is happening in the spring when we plant, that harvest is tied to land. And it's also a piece of giving away and caring for our communities because of issues of food insecurity within climate emergency and how that's growing. So there's the network aspect of it as well as how do we support one another and actually create linked up sustainable communities within different areas across the country. So that's the larger piece of it as well.
Thank you.
Just a very practical question on the Tuesday evening. Do you know yet what time that might be, that hour?
Yes, so I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, John. I'm almost certain we said 7:30 to 8:30. So you've got your time to have dinner beforehand, and you're not just going to bed straight after. That was why we thought that would be a good hour.
Thanks.
The aim of the hour, so we do an hour on our online stuff with Hazelnut, and you can actually pack a load into an hour. So we're really going to stick tight to it. So it won't be one of these things where we say an hour and then we go over. It will be a pretty strict hour just to honor people's time. I will say this though, except the sustaining conversations, those ones are an hour and 15 minutes because it's a larger group and it gives them more time for Q&A with guest speakers. So that those ones are just a little bit longer.
Thank you.
Can I just say that we're a church that has a conventional Sunday morning meeting in a building, albeit a sports hall somewhere. But there's a lot of internal push for an expression of church on our 7-plot allotment that we've inherited from somebody else's previous work. And that what you've just lined out will be something that I sit several people down and say, if we're really going to go for this, you need to drink at this well quite deeply, because then we'll all be singing from the same song sheet when we start. Well, we're already doing stuff down there, but when we really start in earnest, because the contact with those who are not previously churched is quite major.
Yeah.
And so you begin to then unpack what that means, you know.
Totally. That's amazing. Thank you, Dave. That's really great to hear.
We're also hoping that if you say you get your team along, or is that over the time, what we're hoping is that a real cohesion happens as well. So all of a sudden you've had these discussions and you've had space to talk about things. So it's not just reactionary, but you're actually working it out. So you get to know one another and there's space for that team to come together. And if you're just an individual who's like, I want to build a team, but it's just me, don't worry, you can come along and we'll still have you in a group, and it's absolutely fine if that's the stage that you're at. If I'm dreaming about this and I want to see where it's going to go, don't feel that you're somehow behind. That's an okay stage to come at. That's where I started, and that's where a lot of people are starting at as well. So it's also okay if you don't have land, but you're dreaming about that. Some people will have land already, some won't. So we're going to come from a whole range of different things in around resources, and we'll go on this journey together, and we'll see what we can develop over time. The other thing I'll say too is that part of this is that we're not looking to develop a Hazelnut brand for you. So for instance, we're not looking that you carry a Hazelnut name. You can if you want to, but really it's about what's right for your context. Hazelnut isn't going to ask you to sign up for any kind of governance. We won't have any of that over you. We won't look at your finances. That's not any of what we're doing. It's really this supportive collective is what we're calling it. So we can help answer questions, and there's things that we'll, for instance, be able to share out some of our risk assessments and what's our best practice for child protection. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be doing that work for you, and that's not really what you're signing up for. It's more of a supportive network. So hopefully that kind of gives you more of a sense of what we're doing as well.
Just quickly in terms of as well next steps, just thinking of what John was saying about people starting from different points. We will have a sign-up sheet, a sign-up form on the website by the end of the week. And if I have your email address already, I'll send it to you. And basically on that, we'll collect information from you, like, do you have land yet? What's tell us a bit about your project. Do you have a team yet? Would they like to come? Just those kind of questions, so that we can start thinking of how we put you in groups, and how we can support you. If you don't have a plot of land, how we can support you in looking for one before we start, or at the beginning of the course, that kind of thing. So that sign-up sheet is really helpful for us to be able to support you as best as we can.
A piece of that will be just kind of, it could be even asking questions. We have a person who's coming around, could be here today from Birmingham. She's kind of gone from 0 to 30 and all of a sudden having lots of questions. So a big piece of what we can do is say, well, what questions are you asking around land? Have you asked the water question? That's a big one. You might get excited, but is there water available in the middle of summer? You're gonna have to really think about how to get water to your site, things like that. What direction is, so it's everywhere from how do you run a communion service and reach out to others to how do you know where to plant your corn? It's going to be kind of everywhere in between that. And any other question you have, we'll seek to answer as best we can.
Hi, John and Lucy. Just a question around team. So our context is, we were given some funding from our local presbytery, Church of Scotland Presbytery, group of churches, to do something fresh in the community. So we've got a little core team, and we're in the middle of a community audit, just asking community leaders and people in the community how they've coped with COVID and what their needs and aspirations are. And one thing that's come up very quickly over the last few months is a desire for community garden in our small town. And so we've been visiting gardens, both kind of secular and church-based community gardens, all of them growing food as it happens. So we're now pretty sure this is the thing to take forward. So this is very timely. It's amazing, totally amazing. But a question about team. So the core team, for the project, we're part of our exploring the community garden idea is speaking to people who might like to get involved, having the right kind of people on the team. Now, the project is not really to set up a new expression of church, although we will hopefully as we disciple, as we connect with people and get to know them and have faith conversations and do stuff in the garden. Hopefully that will, people will want to. So my question is about the team and also about the kind of foundation of, do we just run a garden and see, hey, come along, see who comes along, or do we start as a worshiping community or a worshiping, our team is a group of Christians and we're then inviting people into that community? What's your advice?
That's a really good question. That's exactly the type of discernment that we want this process to kind of go through, because there's some pieces of that only you and your community will know. And that's kind of what we want to mine out of you guys by going through the process. I suppose the other piece of it is that the answer can be yes for both of those. So what we found is that some people have been confused by Hazelnut because people say, well, is this actually a church plant, or is it like a missional community, or is it an ecumenical expression? There's loads of different denominations here, not just Anglican, or is it a parachurch ministry? And the answer is kind of yes. It actually sits in a number of camps, and it can do that. So I think it might be that you fall more into one of those, but there's no need to rush into that. You can kind of say, yeah, we're Christians that do this, and we're going to be doing Christian things on here. And there's going to be times when non-Christian, when there's loads of non-Christians here, and we can do that as well. We can welcome them as well, and that's okay. So it's I think you can be fluid with it, and that's the beauty of the garden, is it allows for flexibility. I hope that answered your question, or it wasn't too vague, but I think it's a really good question. I think that's, yeah, where we'll go with you.
I'm Amos Owen from Bury St Edmunds in sunny Suffolk. My wife Caroline. We're at the very early stage. We've been thinking about it for a while. We've got a park in Bury St Edmunds where they've got like a nursery and rangers and stuff. And I've approached them and the nursery, and they're now considering it, whether they've got space that we could use. We also approached the local council to see if we could get an allotment, because our church doesn't have land as such. They've got a car park, but that's about it. And we weren't looking at doing raised beds in the car park. We're
Yet, until you do the course, and then you'll be having the.
I was going to say, we've done a bit of that.
Yeah, and that could be a way forward. Who knows? But we're really at the early stage. So I think establishing where, you know, some land is the first step, with and then sort of obviously seeing how we could build a team around sort of people involved and what that would look like. We're at the very early stage of how it would feel or look, or
so yeah, I think that's great. I think I would just want to encourage you that I mean, that's where I started at. So we've got another like in Dewey's Acre down in Wales. They already had like a court next to the cathedral, this piece of land, and they just could get going. For me, it took a while to find a piece of land, lots of emails, lots of working. But I think what I'll encourage you to do is that I felt like I was so tied to land that I didn't see that there are loads of things I could have done now. So one of the resources, if you look on our website under resources, we've got something called Rewild Your Windowsill. So even if you don't have land right now, there's no reason why you couldn't encourage people to grow things in pots, to grow things on their windowsills, and actually see yourself as a dispersed garden while you're looking for land as well. So there's still really beautiful things you can do. There's also guerrilla gardening, you know, literally just going out and saying, here's a piece of land that no one's looking after, and we're just going to plant some stuff on here and see how it goes. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason why not to do that. No one's going to kill you for planting a tomato in, you know, a piece in a verge somewhere, you know? So there's other ways to kind of come along and do some subversive pieces of gardening alongside of us as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I think probably started it actually during lockdown was on one of the Gardeners Worlds episodes. I don't know if anybody else has seen it as well, but they had just a everyday person start a seed exchange in their village within one of the old phone boxes. Did you see that? And so even just that very beginning of doing a sort of a seed exchange could be something that we would even begin with, like you say, prior to getting any land.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just to say as well, on a very practical note, if you do want to go ahead with if you do look at going ahead with council land, or if anyone else is looking at council land, I wrote some guidelines for that. I was chatting to someone who was really struggling with the council because they didn't like the idea of worship being on there. So I spoke, it happened to my dad, who used to be head of property for the council. So I got him, he's a Christian, I got him to sit down and write out some guidelines for how to deal with the council when talking about this kind of thing. So that's helpful for anyone. I'm happy to email that to you because allotments were a bit of an issue, I think, as well, because of the contract you sign and stuff like that. So if that's helpful to anyone, please do get in touch.
I think we just so you know, I think that question is really a big one. Where like when you haven't had a first year under your belt, that question of you're Christians, but how does that work with what we're doing will be a big one. But I can guarantee you, when you are a welcoming presence that's growing and then giving away loads of food to your, you know, local charities and filling up wheelbarrows and going to the high street, no one's gonna, you know, it just ceases.
Yeah.
By the very fruit of what you're doing, those questions will diminish and people will accept what you're doing. That's what we found. We've just become a part of our community so fast. The other thing is that different than setting up like a food bank. When we're growing your own food, we found that it doesn't carry the same feel of gentrification, or kind of like we're kind of coming from outside and gifting you something. Not to say the food banks are wrong, they're much needed. I'm not criticizing food banks, but what we found is because they could come to our garden and help, and they could see how hard we worked, that it allowed us to enter a connect with the community much quicker. That's been our experience. The other thing I'd say too, is just another thing is we've had a number of people come to our garden who are, so part of the whole issue with climate emergency is that people have thought, oh, you know what we'll do? We'll like not listen to the land and we'll just put our chemicals in the land. So all of a sudden they had what they called the green revolution, where they're like, we'll just plant corn in this field and the soil doesn't really matter. We'll just bring chemicals into it. And what they did is, and that's really where we have soil, where our soil's depleted. We have issues around flooding. We have issues around, loads of that. And so what we are kind of the opposite of that. So we actually are completely organic. We're going to encourage our growing methods that don't use any kind of putting false things into it, but taking care of really good soil. We're going to be looking at methods that are really healthy for the soil and also biodiverse. So we're not going to just tell you guys to be planting just one thing, but how do you plant a whole number of things? But also, how do you become a biodiverse community? So we found is that we weren't clever enough to start this way, but it's just kind of happened where we have some people that would consider themselves liberals, some conservatives, some high church, some low church, and now we've got Methodists and Baptists and lots of other people coming along, and it's been really good for that. And the other thing is that we found that we have a whole load of wonderful folks from Hong Kong reselling in Bristol, and they've really latched onto our garden. It's been amazing. And what we found is that the garden is a common language across lots of boundaries. And it's actually the same language across the world. We might grow slightly different things, but a garden is a garden, and we can work together. And so it's been amazing to see that our own kind of the people are also biodiverse, and who we're welcoming is a whole range of people. And I think that's what we really want to encourage as well, as it reaches across boundaries that may not exist sometimes in church, where we love church. I'm a vicar, but for some people that can be a tricky place to enter in, and a garden can be a safer place for people to enter in. And that's something that we really encouraged.
Definitely. Brilliant. Are there any final questions? Just a very quick practical note. There is no cost for this course. It is a free course. However, if you do have a church supporting you, you do have a team that is really passionate about this, and you would like to donate to help us keep doing what we're doing, that's wonderful. And there's a link on the website, but we're not going to ask you on the sign-up sheet, are you donating money? It's wonderful if you can donate money if you're part of this course to help us keep doing what we're doing, but you don't have to, and we're really happy to provide it for free if that's what you need. Just thought I'd finish with that. If there's no final questions, no. Thank you so much for joining us. The link to the form will be on the website by the end of the week, or if you've already contacted, I'm the person you email if you click the email on the Potting Shed page of the website. If you've already emailed me, I have your contacts, and I'll email you the form later this week. If not, it'll be linked on the website. And it'll be really, really great if you could all join us. But we hope this is right. And if it's not, that's fine. But if it is, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to journey with you. Be great to hear all about your projects. Wonderful. John, any final words?
If you have questions after this, do go ahead and get in touch. It might be that your questions will come later. Happy to answer any questions and chat with you. And also, through the course of it, there'll be more questions that will emerge, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now.